Today we get it into another very useful topic, that is static variables and static methods and class methods. We'll talk about that today. Probably if possible, we'll finish all that in today's session. Else, we'll try to finish as much as possible all this. My screen now? Is my screen visible? Okay, so yeah. So just let me know if you can see my screen. So that's about the discussion topic today. So we had already discussion yesterday, I mean day before yesterday. So the discussion is about what is that, friends? It's about instance variables, instance methods, and analysis of all this stuff. Okay. The execution flow of a Python OOP program, class and objects, how objects are created, how classes are created, how instance variables are stored, how methods are what how methods work on object, all that we had discussed in the last class. And we had also discussed about the concept of array of objects. So today what we do, we just try to understand more into the topic of static variables and static methods. So we also did parameter passing in the last class. So I hope we don't need to discuss this topic again. And then, yeah, this point anyhow, I'll cover again. So talking about if you create some multiple objects, every object has its own copy of instance variables. Anyhow, that we talk in today's session. Next, after that, what different variables exist inside a class? A class can have global variables, local variables, instance variables, static or class variable. Both are same. It's not like we have a different kind of static and class. Both are same variables. And such variables, you know, these are all different types of variables, friends. So we had already discussed about local variables, instance variables, but I don't think we had discussed about global variables. That we will definitely discuss about the importance of the globals. This is important. Okay, if you want, we can quickly talk about it. So what is this globals actually? So if you want, if we should talk about two things, let us take one scenario, new. Okay, somewhere you can define Python. You can say global test something. You can define something like this, something like A equal to some 10. Excuse me, some D of F1 colon. You can also declare another variable A equal to 20. Okay, and then you can say print of A here. Okay, so now you see, just this is a small example. The same example is applicable for any scenario. Okay, so now you can see in this file, in this module, we have two variables. This is a global variable, and the same we have declared another variable local, which and the local variable and global variables are same. Okay, but the scope of these two variables are different. Local variable is something which is defined inside a method and which is visible only to that method. Got it? But local variables, global variables are not like that. So global variables are variables which are accessed through the module by any function. And here, if you look at this variable is visible only to method F1. In whichever the method you declare a local variable, in that method, only that variable is visible. But global variables are not like that. They are visible throughout your program. So that is difference between local and global. Got it right, friends? Now you know three different types of variables so far. Global variables now, local instance variables. Soon we are going to talk about static or class variables. Both are same. Now the point is, suppose you create one more method. You can have one more method, def def f2. You can also take a local variable a here and give it to 200 and print that a here. Okay. So now you try to call f1, you try to call f2. Okay. Right. And if you want, you can add print statements wherever we want in Python. Okay. Now you can say, I'll do one thing. Print of a here, and you just defining it as global. Global space a, comma. Okay. Similarly, you can do one thing. You can print all these local variables. Just add a text here, something saying that local in F1. Okay, comma, maybe you can say comma a. And similarly, you can use the same print and print here, put it here, local in F2. These are all important. You need to know, friends, and print it. Now run this program quickly, run this. Now you can see global is something which is coming from here. In the rest of the two cases, we are getting local from respective methods. Here there are few important observations. When we have same variable as global, same variable name as global and local, then always local variable have high priority in a method than global. If we don't have existence of local, then obviously it prefers to access global. This method uses global. But if already we have another variable local with same name, then that local variable have high priority. Then global variables. You got it right. That is important, friends. Okay, that is fine. Discussing all this is fine. Then you can ask me a question. How can I access this global variable also in this method? Now this is fine, Manoram. We understood this. We have two different scopes here, a global scope and a local scope. When variable names are same in both scope, definitely local dominate global. That is clear for us. But the question is, how can I access local as well as global from the same method? If you want to access global, then what is that you can do? Simple. There is a method to approach to implement this. What is that? Print of. You can just define something like global. Okay, comma. There is a method you can apply globals. And with that, you have to pass what variable you want to, what global variable you should access as a parameter. See here. This is how what we do. We can have access to a global variable from within a method which are declared outside method. Global means, as name says, they have global access throughout that file. Now run this now. Now you can see here, we have global defined for 2 times. Got it right? And this is the method which is used to invoke global variables wherever you want in a file. You got it right, friends. So even you have local inside a method, still if you want to access a global as well as from the same scope, then we can use these globals to exclusively, explicitly access global variables inside a method scope. And this has a other purpose as well. It is not just only for accessing variables. We did a scenario. Generally, we keep using this scenario. So if you want to declare a variable as global while developing the code itself, one more scenario with global. So I think you got this right, friends, because we didn't discuss much on this topic, local variables, global variables. As we already see that here, we are just seeing something here about local and global. So I just thought like to have a quick coverage on that. as we are summarizing types of variables. Now you know about local, global, all that stuff. That is fine. Instance still this static will talk just in few minutes. Okay, that is fine. But I have a quick question. How exactly we can use globals? Okay, globals can be method can be used to access a global variable from a method when we have a similar local variable in the same method. To differentiate local from global, definitely this global method is helpful, globals method. But what is the exact purpose of globals? Do you have any idea? Okay, let me share you a scenario where we apply in our coding. So generally, we try to define mean as well. We had discussed. Suppose you know right. So that validation. If what is that underscore underscore name underscore equal to you know right underscore name, right? This is like creating a driver program and explicitly defining main in a code. Now I want to define program level global variables. What is that, friends? Program level global variables. Then I can define like this. What is that? Something like globals of some A. Similarly, okay. Generally, in real time, we have that project specific variables defined as global like this. Suppose let's take example of database itself. You have some database name, right? So that is something we make that as a global variable. So that if once you define here as a global, that variable name can be accessed anywhere. You don't need to define it. Okay. Then this acts as a global. Okay. Next after that, database name. So then password, some just a quick this thing. We generally don't hard code here. Just for your this thing, I'm sharing a scenario. Okay. Okay. This is how we can define a what is that? Global levels at a program, global variables at a program level. One approach is this. Okay, this is fine. Okay, this is one approach. Second approach is this. Suppose if you want to define global variables at the time of creating your driver program and this global variables if you want to access anywhere, this is another way of defining global variables. Now, once you define this other thing, what you have to do is that database name equal to you generally, we have certain database URLs. That database name you have to pass here. Suppose here I am just writing as test database. In development, you have altogether a different thing. Got it right? So database name and then password also we can say some password equal to. I'm not. I don't have any specific password, so I just put ABCD 123 @ This makes little okay. At least this is more secure password. So this is how we define it. Now what you can do is you can just print them. But in development now, once you assign this global like this, you can access this anywhere in any method. Suppose you see here, you defined a global, right? You can say print see database name, print password. You don't need to print that here itself. Okay, just remove this. Once I define this global variables at somewhere at the beginning, somewhere in driver program, then these globals can be called anywhere within class methods or any other normal methods directly like this. Now, right, run this now, just to get some idea. Okay, database name is not somewhere, I think. Hmm, just a minute. I think I implemented a scenario like this. What I do is how to define global using globals because we implemented this kind of thing. So I just want you to share so that you get idea in Python. Hmm. Yes, now I got, see here. Something like this, friends. If you want to define, yeah, this is what you should do. I did a different thing. Yeah, you have to assign it here itself. So equal to the database name, you set it here itself. Something you should do because we did a similar scenario. I want you also to know this that globals method also can be used like this. Remove this. From now onwards, you can use this database name and password wherever you want. Let's test it once. Let's see that. Still, there is something missing. What is missing? We defined it properly. Database name. Okay, let me print it here first. Print database name. Let me try another one. So this is throwing some error. Let me put. I don't think codes is the issue here. Let me
Did you define that variable, sir? Outside.
We need to define it's outside of the function above.
Yeah, outside of the function you need to define, right?
I I believe we don't need that. If you see here, okay,
No, we have to define, sir. It's required.
okay,
It's
I'll do
required.
that. Got it, got it. Let's do one thing then. Let's give a try like this. Database name equal to maybe. We'll try other. Yeah, let me try another scenario because we did implemented something. Idea is I just want to share you that to make something global. So similarly, password, just a test password. This is not something really. Yeah, there is a way to make these variables as global. Even this at this level, these are local. So let's set some A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3. Just leave it like that. Yeah, maybe now if you pass this to the globals method, do one thing. Pass this to globals and also pass this to, if you want to convert it to a global variable, once after defining, probably we should pass it to the global. This is a useful thing because we generally keep using this scenario. You remove this here, okay? So now let's run this now. There is a way to convert it to global. So if not, anyhow, tomorrow I'll share you that. It did something. Okay, no problem. I don't want to waste much time, but just want to share you a scenario. But this guy, there is a way for this. Okay, I'll
The
talk.
value is given in double quotes, sir. Uh, The test database is given within double quotes.
No, the codes
Yeah,
doesn't.
that is string, right? That is okay.
That is okay.
No
We don't
issue.
have codes issue because something we should do. Maybe let me put codes to this and see finally if this work.
Yeah,
There is a,
I think it is required, sir.
let me put, otherwise, anyhow, we implemented a scenario. I'll share it tomorrow, not a problem, because this helps you even if you are doing some development, how to define global variables at the beginning of your code itself in the driver program itself, so that we can access it throughout your program, throughout your application. Just want to share you that. That's all. Otherwise, we are already doing something. Okay, this is not working. Let me just otherwise ask Chat GPT. So
We declare it in 16 line or above function once.
no, no, no. I remember we defining in the main itself. I can't see the names, but ma'am, because we do that. No, we don't need to define outside this one. Within a method also we can make something global. That is the idea. If this scenario we already we do remove this. Let's remove. This is what we already discussed. What is global, local? But how do you declare a global from some scope, and how do you access it throughout application is the idea. Very simple thing only, because I generally did it, but I
Keyword,
did sometime back we did a
keyword,
scenario. No
no, we
problem.
can use global
Hmm.
in the 17 that you declared, right? 20 line. Just added global there.
Here, yeah, should
Uh,
be. We should say
Global
a
keyword.
global variable of something.
Keyword.
Yes, there should
Mm.
there should be a declaration. Correct, correct, correct. Something like something we did like this global. Okay, let's remove this and see. Now we can, once you define like this, or maybe we can pass it directly to that method or what, we'll see. So one, we have to define a variable. After that, we do initialization. That I remember, something like test and password, something like equal to 1, 2, 3, 4. Just for testing purpose, we are seeing this. Otherwise, I'll just do one more use case, one more workaround. If not, I'll share it tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a class anyhow. Then I'll share you. Still, this is not working. Then we do one thing. Global sub. Define it directly in the method. Global sub. Something like this. Okay. It's okay. I don't want to waste much time here. We have to define somewhere something like this. Please correct this. Just let me ask ChatGPT. It is also printing same whatever I am asking. What is the difference it is showing here? Okay, let me try this. The question. So where I'll share it tomorrow, friends. So not an issue, because I just want this also to be in your this thing. This doesn't work as usual. See, but once you define as globals like this, once set is set as global, again you don't need to use global every time. That I remember. Sorry, we'll share it tomorrow. Okay, let's jump away from this. That small thing we'll talk in the next session. Okay, I'll share you that thing. But this is a quick idea about local and global thing, and also global's method as well. There is other purpose that definitely I'll come back in tomorrow's session. Okay, that is also useful for development, not just for learning purpose. So somewhere something is missing here. I'll check and like it's a very simple change. That's all. So, but this is idea about locals and global. Okay, and the next after that, let's jump to the static scenario. What is static scenario? Static variables and functions. What is this? This is something really helpful in development. Okay, but if you ask me, I didn't use much of static things actually in my development, because I generally use more automations as a DevOps engineer. So for us, we don't need too much of OOP. Okay. But for web development, definitely these are for some other kind of this thing related to when people do that full stack development. These are definitely needed and these are helpful. So what is static variable? Now we know about three different types of variables: local, global, instance. All this is fine. But one thing is you should be very clear about what is this instance scenario. Instance variables means what? They are part of object, right? And every object has its own copy of instance variables. You know, right? When we create multiple objects, each object has its own copy of instance members. That we see in this session. Interesting. But what is static? And these instance variables belong to object. But static variable is a variable. Where do we define that? If it is instance variable, you can see here, right? Instance variables are defined inside a method like this. See, but static variables are a variable declared inside a class outside a function. Is nothing but static or class variables. So let us take a simple example. So see here, let us take one quick test scenario. Again, just a FYI, tomorrow we'll just quickly check on this. That is a very simple change. I remember. I exactly I forget that syntax. Only thing is that syntax is important. That's all. So now what do we do? Static underscore test. So you take a simple class, any class, friends, and then test and then come here. So maybe if you want, you can define this thing, static variables and methods. This is an interesting topic again. Okay. What is class test? So static variable. You take a static variable. Now, what is it? It is defined inside class, outside method. Suppose you say A equal to 10, B equal to 20, name equal to some. Okay. Return. So age equal to some 40, something like this. So just you can remove this. Or let's have all this together. These are all static variables. If you declare variables directly inside a class are static, are class variables. You got it right. So if you do same in Java or C Sharp, they become instance. But and there is a different way to declare in what in Java or C Sharp. But Python is a bit different. If we should define instance variables, that has to be done. You can see here within an instance method itself. We don't declare instance variables anywhere outside method inside a class. And if you do that, and such variables are what? These are all static or class variables. Just the both are synonyms. You don't need to get confused there. Okay. What happened to this? Okay, right. So what are these? These are static or class variables. What is the difference now? Now we see the difference. Suppose if you want, you can add another method, d of some m1 and so you can just say print. This is the test. Or if you want, try to print these members of class directly here. But for now, I want to go step by step. We'll try do this later. Okay, this is just print m1. This is enough. Leave it like that. Or if you want, you can define some instance variable here, some self dot a equal to some 100 or something. Okay, that is fine. Okay, now some self dot x. Let's not confuse anyone here. Let's make it different. Instances are different. Static variables are different. Later on, we will see all that. Okay, conflicting scenarios and see how they behave. That is a different thing. Now, this point is, you can see now we can have a clear comparison. If it is instance, it is defined inside instance method. If it is static or class variables, they are declared inside class, outside method. This is very clear. That is what static is. Second thing, instance members are part of object. Means what do you mean by part of object? These variables exist only when object of class exists. If you create object for a class, then only the possibility of, we have a possibility of having instance variables. That too, if you call M1 method. Without object, you cannot expect instance members, but static members can exist without object. And these are part of class, just class, not part of object. Static variables are part of class, but not object. That's why you don't need object to access static members. What is that? We don't need object to access static members, but instance members, you cannot imagine instance members without object, because memory is allocated only when you create object for instance members. So you go, I think this difference should be very clear for you, friends. So those points are clearly mentioned here. What is static variable? A variable declared inside class and outside function, or a method, you can say function or method, anything should be fine, is called a static class or variable, static or class variable. And difference is here, only one copy of memory is allocated to a static variable and it is shared by all objects. What is this? I'll give you with a detailed proof as well. And static variables, another important point we had already discussed, is not part of object, but part of class. So we can access the static variables directly using class name. We don't need objects for static variables. Why? Because they don't belong to objects. They belongs to class. So this is how you call static method or static variable, just class name dot that variable name. For example, you see, if it is, we see that both scenarios so that you get a clear comparison. Suppose you create an object, some test equal to some test. Okay, this is fine. I created object, but this is needed. We'll do otherwise we do one thing. Let's go with scenario one. Let us do testing of static variables. Okay, how do you access static members? Access using class name. Simple, very simple, right? Then you can see print. So you can use that F string and you can say A is, and then just pass A here. That is enough. Okay, not this A. You can say test dot, that class name dot variable name. See, this is how you can access static variable, because these are in class scope, not in object scope. And we don't need to create any object to access static variables. So again, now copy this, paste it, just do some 3 or 4 prints. And how many static variables are declared? 4. Just define B here and define another one is name, call name, and last one is call age. Just change your description here. This is B is, the name is okay, and then the age is something like this. Now you run this. Do you think we have any error here? We don't expect that now, because we are going in a very clear approach. Okay, right click, run this now. See this, you got output here. See this. Suppose now did you create any object? No, right? This is a clear cut proof here itself. Then try to call X without creating object. See, let me try this test. This is monkey testing. Okay, so what I am doing, accessing instance variable. Okay, so directly or using class name. Let me using class name. Let me try this scenario. So I didn't tested this earlier, but I'm doing a monkey testing, right? Let's do this test.x. This should not work because instance members exist only upon creating object. And we don't have any objects as of now. So let's run this and see what happens. See, definitely you should get error. This is what the expectation is. What is it? Test has no attribute X. We have at X here, right? We are seeing that inside class, test class. But this interpreter is saying that I don't see any X. Why? It's a very clear differentiation here. This X exists only upon creating object. That is a clear thing we are discussing since the beginning. That is what differences between, that is what the difference is, the difference between instance and static or class variables. So if this should exist, before that, what is that I should do? First, I should create a object, and then just creating object alone is not enough. This just allocates empty. This creates empty object. Then what should I do? I should also call this initialization method. What is initialization method? In whichever the method you declare your instance variable, you define your instance variable, that method is initialization. Soon we are going to talk about constructors. Again, we change the approach of declaring and initializing instance variables. But for now, where this defining of instance variables is done, we define that in a M1 method. Then here again you should call M1. Now you call X. You can now call X, that too with the reference here. Now run this now. Now you can see what did we define here? X, and just change this description. X is, run it again. So you can see somewhere, sorry, where did I declare it? Yeah, this can be left like that. Here just change that description. The testing we do here, right click and run this and see X is 100. So this is a clear difference. So we are seeing that difference between instance members and static members. We had this is a clear cut observation. Static members are part of class, not part of object. We can access them directly using class name. And how many copies of static variables exist? Just one for the whole class. One name, one age, one A, one B, one, that's all. The difference, let me just show you here, friends. Okay. So I'll do one thing. I'll just show the difference. Let me make this as a parameterized method. See here. So now I just take some X and then set that X to this. Okay. Now, or otherwise, let us apply a similar scenario for this one, so you can easily understand. But before that, let me do one thing. Let me share this code before I make changes, further changes, so that it's easy for you to test it. Okay, let me share this with you. Okay. Yeah, you have it now. Let's do the check here. Suppose you don't need these many to do this testing. So first thing, you can take this method M1, or you can use a method increment just for testing purpose. Okay, you get some idea, a detailed difference between the how many copies of static exist, instance exist. For now, this is a static. I am incrementing. What I am doing here is, don't use self here. You can say test dot a equal to a equal to test dot a plus 1. So what I am doing here, every time when I try to increment, I am doing this incrementation here. Okay, we'll go one by one. Now I'm using instance method. Remove this parameter that is not needed for this. Now remove all this. We did testing for all this. What we do is, okay, there are multiple scenarios for this. What is that? So let's do one. If this is instance, if this should work, I think we have to again create object, of course. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's create 3 objects. Test equal to test1 equal to test. Because if I should call that, again we'll change that scope again. We use static methods. We replace that. Just for testing purpose, I'm showing this. So when I created 3 objects. The purpose of creating these objects is just to call this method increment. Now do one thing. You can also print it directly here. What is that? Print of test.a. Okay, what is that? You can save test.a here. Otherwise, let's do one thing. Yeah, do that, no problem. Now let's run this now. And then just do one thing. Yeah, call this increment method. What is that? Test1 dot increment. Similarly, call remaining to call increment on remaining two objects, test2, test3. Now, what is the output we see in what is the result we see in the output? We have 10 initialized. So what is it? Is it 3 tens? The expectation. Now, if you answer this, that gives you more idea. We have 3 tens as output. That is one scenario. Second scenario, 3 11s. Okay. Because we are incrementing by 1, it should, excuse me, friends, either print 11, 11, 11, or else another scenario 11, 12, 13, another one, or some other output. One should be a correct answer here. What's your out? What's your this thing here, friends? Which one you choose here? Is it 11, 12, 13, or is it 11, 11, 11, or 10, 10, 10? One answer should be probably the right answer. What is that? Let's just run it and see. Okay, see 11, 12, 13. So this shows one important point. What is that? This is just one copy. Let me just show you the idea. So this gives you more a bigger picture for you. Suppose this is your global, I mean static variable, not global, static. Globals are different. Just now we discussed that. That is a different thing. Now A is a static. Now what is that we are doing? We are incrementing that static variable inside this method. Okay, fine. And then we are printing it. So the output is what? 11, 12. This is one famous this exam scenario, friends. Maybe people ask in interview or not, I don't know. This is a scenario which you expect in exam, this certification exams. Okay, that is fine. Now, see how many copies of the static variables exist inside memory. If it is static, we just have one copy. We don't have separate copy for each object or something. We have 3 objects. Don't expect separate A for this, separate A again for this. So I'll just show that also. I'll prove all these things. Okay, separate A for this one. Don't expect this. Don't expect this. When you call increment on test1 object, you might think 11 here. Some of us might think again you are calling it as a fresh on test2 object, right? You might think 11 here. Again you are calling fresh on test3. You might think this should be 11. Yes, that is true in case of instance variables. What variables? Instance variables, because that is separate for each object. But if it is static variable, we just have one copy like this. Suppose now how many objects you created? Let us do one thing. This is a global copy. This is interesting, friends. Just observe carefully. That's all. So what happened now? This is our variable A, which is 10. You can just define like this. This is A, and we have 10 here now. Okay, now how many objects are there here on this static variable? Because we know very clearly how many copies of static variables exist. Just one copy is created for a class, and it is shared by all objects. If objects should share, see, so we have 3 objects in this class, test1, test2, test3. These are 3 objects. This is object 1. Let me write, no problem. This is object 1. Okay, this is object 2, and this is object 3. How many objects are there now? We have 3 objects. And what is it? This is test 1. Okay, let me just add this. This is test 1, and this is test2 and this, because here this is test3. Okay, likewise we have how many objects here? 3 objects. Now you call increment, right? How many increment method? Just one copy of method exists always. Methods will be just one copy again. So now we are calling that increment on this object incr. See, same increment on test1. Otherwise, you put it here. I'll do one thing. I will add that increment here. incr here on test1 object, incr on test2 object, and incr on test3 object. Right? So now, what is it, friends? Now, when you call increment on test1, see, this is interesting here. What is that? When you call increment on test1, then this 10, we have just one copy of static. Then which variable gets updated? Same A gets updated. This becomes 11 in when we do it, when we do a first call on increment on test1 object. Okay, on which object? On test1 object. Okay, you can, this is not needed. Similarly, what, friends? Now you are calling, what is that you are doing? You are calling increment on which one here? This one on test2 object. Even now we are trying to increment which one? This same static variable. Then that gets incremented from 11 to 12. In the third scenario, we are calling increment. This is in the third scenario. Again, we call increment on test3. Even the object is different, the static variable is just one copy. So that same static variable gets updated. Now you get 13 here. So this is how internally the execution is happening here. Got it right, friends? One copy of static variable shared by all the objects. Right? That's why you get the output like this, friends. 11, 12, 13. You got it right. This should give you a clear idea. One copy of static variable is created and it is shared by all objects. That is why when you call increment on test1, it is 11, test2, 12, test3, 13. Now, if you just run the output, see, one answer is correct and that answer is this one. See, perfect, right? So that is the idea about what this clearly proves that what is that? One copy of static variable exists and that variable is shared by all objects. Right? That is the important point, and that is what we are talking here. So only one copy of memory is allocated to a static variable and it is shared by all objects. That is what is that here. Now that statement should be very clear for you with all this discussion. Got it now? So that is fine. Next one more scenario. What is that? Let's apply this one. This is much, otherwise we'll modify this itself. Why again? So let this increment method be as is. We'll make small change. Let's make this as a instance variable. Okay. Take one method. You know, to define variables, we need this kind of setup. Set a or something, or set var. Okay. And here, if I want to make this a as a instance, just use self.a and assign to 10. Now take another method increment. This time, don't use class name. Okay. Make this as a self dot, sorry. Now see this self dot a, again self dot a. Now what I am doing, this is another test to prove that there is a difference between instance and static members. Now similar scenario, I declared an instance variable and I am incrementing it the way we did for static variable. But now what is the output? Again, in these 3 answers, one answer is correct answer. Probably this may not be the right answer, but any one of these 2 answers is right one, or it might be the same or otherwise. So what's your answer on this scenario? Now you see, we converted that static variable to instance now. Now applying same kind of incrementation on the same static variable, sorry, same instance variable. What would be the output in this case? Is it 11, 12, 13 again, or is it 11, 11, 11, or is it 10, 10, 10? What would be that? Any answer, friends? One is the correct answer, definitely again. So this should give you, yes, yes, somebody is saying answer. Yes, ma'am. What is that?
All three 11s.
All three 11s, one answer. You can also answer in chat box, friends. If you think it's okay to answer, that's fine. Even if you don't answer, it's fine. So, and we again do a postmortem on this. Answer is definitely whatever our ma'am answered just now. Let's run this now. Now you, okay, somewhere there is a small typo. We'll just try to fix it. Test object has no attribute A. Okay, you know the reason, right? What is that reason, friends? Why I'm getting this error? By now you can easily figure it out this issue. Attribute error. Why this attribute error? We already discussed this number of times. So anyone can fix this error, friends? Simple, right? I know the answer. I know why I am seeing this error. But
Need
how
to
about,
create object.
yeah, objects are already here. You can see 11, 12, 13. At line 11, 12, 13, we have objects, ma'am. But we forget to do something, because that is why we are not able to access A. Object is there, we are calling increment, all that is fine. But what is that? I discussed this because again this is like a reminder, or again bringing the same topic back to the discussion. See, I discussed this point even in the beginning yesterday, day before yesterday. Once you create object, that is not enough. You must also call this method where we are defining instance variable. At this stage, it is just an empty object. If it is Java, when you create object itself, it is declared with all instance variables. But if it is Python, we just only have empty objects. And if this should be set with instance variables, then definitely whichever method is doing initialization, that method must be called. Got it right, friends? So what is that I should do? At least one time, I have to call this method. What is that? I have to say some test1 dot set value. When I do this, then this works. Got it right? But what here when I say set var, now at this stage, suppose you see at this stage, so what's happening here? Let me just show you another this thing here. So you declared, you created three objects. So what is that three objects? This is test1, this is test2, this is test3. What is there in test1? For now, these are empty objects. This is test1, or otherwise you can name on top as well. Test1, test2. Okay. As of now, these are empty objects, friends. They don't have anything inside them. Okay. Now, what is that you should do? If something should be there inside that, if they must be initialized, then this is something we are discussing again and again. This method, whatever is doing initialization, we must call it if we should initialize these objects. So what is that I should do? I should call setVar. So here, what is that I should do? Call set underscore var method on test1, again on test2. So set var, again set var. You have to call this method on each object separately. Just calling on one object is not enough. If you call set var on test1, then only that object is initialized. It won't initialize test2 and test3. Got it right, friends? Because every object has its own copy of instance variable. Now, if you see here in this code, when I say, see here, test1 dot set var. What is this do? Run this now. See, suppose if you are printing a, okay, no problem. You can see some incremented value there. Okay, maybe I do one thing. I print increment immediately after every object. Okay. So even this test2 dot increment, let me put it here. Test3 dot increment, let me put it here. Okay, fine. Now run this. I got 111, see, but once it comes to test2, again it's throwing error because this increment is trying to access A from test2 object. But without calling setVar on this object, this increment cannot have access to A. So what is that I should do now? If I should remove this error, attribute error, then I should again call setVar. At this stage, what happens? That setVar sets, if you see here, you get that clear picture. Sets that this object with initially it sets object with 10. Now you are calling increment on that after that, right? You are calling increment again, right? When you call increment, that 10 again is incremented to now this 10 becomes 11 here. And this is done only for that object, only for test1. So when you set something for test1, it doesn't have any change for test2 or test3, right? Because test1 is a different object from test2, test3. And any change in one object doesn't have impact on other objects, right? If I just call setVar and increment on test1, that is applied only to test1, not for test2 and test3. Okay, so point is simple. Now what is that I should do? Then if you should fix this, just call setVar for test2 and then call increment. And similarly setVar for test3 and then call increment. Now run this. What would be the output? Unlike in the previous case, static variables, you don't see 11, 12, 13. Here also it would be 11 only. Why we'll see in the analysis. Here also it will be 11 only. Why? Once you create this object and call setVar, this object is empty now. And when you call setVar, again this is set with 10 here. What is that here inside this setVar? It is defined as 10. That A is defined as 10. Even this object is set to 10. Whatever you did previously is for object test1. And these are instance members, right? Simple. Change in one object doesn't have impact on another. Now, when you say call setVar on test2, a fresh copy of 10 is loaded into this test2. That's all. Now, after that, again, you do one thing. What is that? Call increment. When you call increment, this increment is applied only on this test2. So this 10 again becomes 11. Again, same thing. Now, if you come to this one, test3. When you call setVar, again a fresh copy of 10 is loaded. Okay. So what is happening here? Again 10 is loaded as a fresh copy. And when you call increment, okay, increment method, then this 10 becomes 11. Now that is what we see in the output. See, when you run this, see here, you get 11, 11, 11, 11. Why? Because this is the reason behind this. You got it right, friends? So it clearly proves one thing. If it is instance variable, every object has its own copy of own value of instance variable. You can see test1 has its own instance members, test2 has its own instance members, test3 has its own instance members. Change in one instance member doesn't have impact on other object instance members because that change is specific to that object. If you modify one object, that doesn't affect other objects. So this is a very useful discussion. This is very important to understand to get a deeper insight of OOP, the object behavior, the static variable behavior. At memory level, if you understand, then it's easy for you to do in your development. So this is overall idea, friends. Idea between this gives you definitely a deeper insight about static variable and then instance variables and how static variables are created, how many copies are there, right? And then how instance variables are created, how many copies exist for each object. So, and we did very useful scenarios like for testing these two. So that should give you a overall picture about these two, difference between these two. So let me just share this with you. Okay. Okay, that's it for today. Tomorrow we'll complete on static methods, class methods, all that, and then finally we jump to constructors topic. So that with that the foundation for OOP will be completed. Then other topics doesn't take much time. I am only trying to make sure to provide a strong foundation, friends. That's all. Okay, I'm stopping recording.